So today we are looking at, we are still on submission to human authority, and we are looking at submission to social parents. Last week, or the last session, we looked at submission to natural parents. We looked at biological parents. We looked at foster parents. We looked at parents-in-law. We spoke about the fact that it's not about being accountable to them, because as adults we are no longer accountable to them, but there is wisdom in their age and there's wisdom in their experience, and so it's important that we still give them honor, and we don't have to wait until we have everything in the world, but just showing little or doing little acts of appreciation, just showing thanks for the things that they do is important. And it also is not a matter of whether they took care of you or they did not take care of you. God does not distinguish between parents who are deserving of honor and those who are not deserving of honor. Same thing we learned in submission in marriage. And so it's important that we allow God to use us in love towards our natural parents, even when they are not being even when they may not be behaving honorably. And so today we are looking at submission to social parents. And under social parents, we have mentors, we have parent figures in society, and then we also have patriarchs. So starting with mentors, your mentors in society are, using a dictionary definition of mentor. A mentor is a trusted counselor or guide or a tutor or a coach. And so your mentor in society, or your mentors, are those who contribute to your personal, your social, your professional development. So it could be basically anybody. It could be your boss. It could be a senior colleague at work. It could even be a family member, but someone who kind of sets themselves apart to train you and to bring out your full potential in any of these areas. And so these are people that you might select, or might select you, or might be given to you by God. But either ways, it's important to honor these people and keep honoring them even past mentorship, because at some point in time you complete your mentorship, or you might complete your mentorship. But it's important that even beyond completion of your mentorship, you still keep giving them honor for all the things that they have done for you, all the things that they have taught you, and all that they have imparted onto you. And so one thing you can do is to say thank you. That's the same thing we spoke about when we were looking at natural parents, looking for every little opportunity to say thank you. You can get them a gift. For example, my research mentor is my bachelor's supervisor. So he supervised my bachelor's thesis, and I am still in contact with him. He still helps me out a whole lot. And every time I'm in Ghana, I try to go and see him. So the last time I was in Ghana, he's basically the main reason why I went to Kumasi. Every time I told people, they didn't understand. Like, why would you go all the way to Kumasi just to bring him a gift? But I appreciate what he's done for me so much that I always look for the opportunity to honor him in some way. And I know that he appreciates it. And that even encourages him to continue to invest in me. Because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have even really looked in the direction of academia, right? He was the one who kind of drew my attention to it, that I should look into this, because he said he believes I wouldn't survive in industry. He was right at the time, but I didn't understand. But someone like this, it's important that you honor them. It's important that you take every opportunity you have, every opportunity you are able to honor them with your words. Give credit where credit is due. So, like I said, maybe at some point in time you complete your mentorship, even after that, you continue to give them credit where credit is due. You continue to give them honor where honor is due. You never get to the point where you feel like you've outgrown them. Okay? You never get to the point where you feel like you've outgrown them. Still using my research mentor as an example, right? It would be easy for me at this point in time to feel like I don't need him anymore, right? Because number one, I'm no longer in the same field he does research in. Number two, my current professor is in a higher rank academically, has higher exposure, and all of these opportunities that I also have access to, that he may not be able to grant me access to. So if I lacked wisdom, and I thank God that I don't, but if I lacked wisdom, I could say that I don't need him anymore. Like I don't, there's nothing he can offer me, which is not true though. There's nothing he can offer me that my current supervisor cannot offer me, and offer it in like much, much better realms, if I should say. But then knowing and understanding that this man played a role in my foundation, and without that role that he played in my foundation in academia, I wouldn't be where I am today. I still see it as necessary to continue to honor him. And so that's one thing that I want us to really take away, that never feel like you've outgrown your mentors, never feel like you've outgrown your parents, never feel like you've outgrown any authority figure in your life, right? Because even if you grow past them, it's still important that you continue to give them the honor for what they have, for the role that they have played in bringing you to the place where you are. And another thing with mentors is that if you lack wisdom, once again, it will be easy for you to feel like they are a ticket to your success. And once you get your success, you can put them aside. So not just that you feel like you've outgrown them, but people might even have the mentality that, okay, this person has something I need. And they draw close to them, or they treat them as a mentor with the mindset that they are using them, and then once their use is fulfilled, they abandon them. But that should not be the case at all. I remember when we were talking about Esther in the Virtuous Woman series, we spoke about her relationship with Mordecai and her relationship with Haggai, the king's chamberlain, who was in charge of the concubines. When we read Esther chapter 2, verse 15, in the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go in unto the king. She required nothing but what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. And so, even up until the point where Esther was graduating from her mentorship, right, she didn't look past Haggai. She was wise in listening to Haggai, because we mentioned that Haggai had been in that position for a long time, and he probably knew what the king wanted. And so it was wise of her to only decide to go for what Haggai was advising her to go for. And I believe strongly that apart from the favor of God, of course, that is also one thing that caused Esther to win favor in the eyes of the king, because she listened, or she paid attention to the one who knew the king and the one who could show her what the king liked. And so Esther had this humility, and Esther had this submissive spirit that helped her to get ahead. Same with her relationship with Mordecai. Even when she ended up in the palace, she did not become, she did not feel like she had outgrown Mordecai, right? She was still listening to Mordecai. That's how she got to know that some of the king's servants were planning to poison him. That's how she got to know that Haman was having this very evil plan to destroy the Jews. Without all that information, she wouldn't have been able to be the queen that we all look up to and we all admire. It was that wisdom of a submissive spirit that enabled Esther to, one, find favor in the eyes of everyone she saw, and also be able to avoid all the arrows that the enemy was trying to shoot at her and trying to shoot are the Jews. And one thing we need to notice also about mentors is that mentors are people, if you choose the right mentor, mentors are people who really genuinely care about you. For whatsoever reason, they see potential in you and they want you to help you develop that potential. And so they might sometimes have to give you tough love. They might sometimes have to be tough on you. But this is perfectly okay. If you look at the Bible, even God, who loves us unconditionally, sometimes has to discipline us when we are getting out of line. And we know from Hebrews chapter 12, from verse 5 to 6, that when God chastises us or when God disciplines us, it is for our own good. The Bible talks about the fact that God disciplines the child whom he, or the one whom he accepts as a child or accepts as a son, right? And so we know that with our mentors as well, when they have to be tough on us, it's not because they dislike us, but rather it's because they want us to be the best version of ourselves. And usually the best version of ourselves will come out of pressure situations. And so let's bear that in mind. If you have anyone who is mentoring you in any arena, whether it's professionally, academically, whatsoever it is, bear that in mind and be open to correction, be open to discipline, be open to being squeezed a little bit or being put under pressure a little bit, knowing that it will bring out the best in you in the end. But another thing is that apart from the fact that you do need the discipline and you do need the tough love, sometimes God might even use these people to test your character and also to build your character. So there might be some people who may be harsher than necessary. It may be that it's their character. It may be that they are doing it on purpose. Whatsoever the case, it's important that you bear in mind, number one, what your goal is and what you want to get out of this relationship or what you want to receive from this person, but also recognize that a lot of the time God puts us in these situations, or God allows us to enter certain situations like this so that we can also, first and foremost see what we have in us. Because usually our character, we see our true character when we find ourselves in difficult situations. When everyone is being lovely, when everyone is being patient, when everyone is loving on you, it's easy for you to love on them back. But when people are behaving some way, that's when you see what is really in you. If you are proud, it will show. If you are impatient, it will show. If you are arrogant, it will show. If you are prone to self-pity, it will show. It's in those difficult moments that God really shows us what is in us. And after he shows us what is in us, he begins to then build proper character within us. And so let's bear that in mind and let us rejoice in the chastening of the Lord, or as it says in Hebrews, that we will not despise the chastening of the Lord. I will pause here. Is there anything that anyone would like to share on honoring social mentors? Is there any example that anyone has in terms of a relationship with a mentor, in terms of ways that you have honored your mentor that you would like to share, or any question on mentoring in the social realm that you would like to ask? Yes, dear.
Our mentors, like you mentioned something that mentors see, like they see the potential in you and they want to help you develop it. Is it always the case that they actually see your potential, or sometimes they can translate their desire into it?
They can translate their desire into it in what way?
Like, so let's say, let's say they are prejudices, right? So this person wishes that everyone is in academia. I'm using your example. Mm-hmm. So they tend to want to push maybe those they are mentoring into academia. Are there cases if like you notice that is like the case, how do you navigate such a situation knowing that this thing this person is telling me to do, I really, really, really am not interested in it? And how do you navigate such a situation?
Okay, that's a good question. As always, first and foremost, ask God for wisdom because everyone is different. But I mean, that is something that happens, even not just with mentors, even with parents. We have, I think many Africans have the situation where parents kind of try to get their children to live out their lives on their behalf. So the kind of life that they had wanted to live or whatsoever is the dream that they had for their children. But I think that mentorship should be a mutual thing. And usually if you have a mentor in a certain area, this person has to be someone who has been successful in that area. So if this mentor is pushing you into an area that they are an expert in, but then it's not something you are interested in, then maybe you need to have a conversation with them on the kind of mentorship you want from them, right? You need to have a conversation with them on the kind of mentorship you want from them. Maybe it's not a professional mentorship that you want from them, but then, I don't know, mentorship in a particular skill, maybe a soft skill is what you want to learn from them. In that case, you have to be really clear that this is really what I would like to learn from you, and this is the direction that I would like to go in. I think that, I mean, with different people, they can have different responses or different reactions, but I think that in the mentorship relationship is not by force, and so you can kind of talk your way around it, I think, because unless it is a situation where the person really truly has the upper hand. So for example, if it's a boss and an employee relationship, you have to be quite careful how you handle that. But still, I think that there is room to maneuver. But it's really about having an honest conversation with the person, because also you don't want the person to be stringing you along like, oh, this is my protege, right? This is the person who's going to take after me, and they want to kind of live their life through you, when really that is not what you want. So it's important that in your speech, in your communication with them, you kind of express that, okay, I really admire you for what you do, but this is not really what I want to do. I want to do this, but this is what I see you doing that I think will help me get to where I want to go. And so this is what I would like to learn from you. I think it's important that you are quite clear on that. And it's also important that you stand your ground, because with some people, if you really don't stand your ground, you will find yourself going in the direction they are trying to get you to go in without actually making the choice to go in that direction. Blessing, is that enough of an answer?
Yes, that is.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you too. Does anyone else have anything to add? I think that's actually like what Blessing, do you have something else to add?
No, Mom.
Okay. I think what Blessing mentioned is actually a very important point, not just in your relationship with mentors, but I mean, now we are all adults, so it might not be that big of a deal, but even in relating with parents, for example, that's when it can get really tricky, because I remember when I was younger, my dad wanted me to become a doctor. And so he wanted me to do science and then go into medical school. And I, on the other hand, you cannot pay me enough to be a doctor. I cannot do doctor work. I cannot stand to see people suffering, and I can't do anything in that moment to like put them out of their misery. Like, there's no way I could do the job of a doctor, and there's no way I do not like science, I do not like math, and so I wanted to stay away from it completely. My dad did everything to try to convince me. He tried to get my teachers on board. He did everything. And I know that he had my best interest at heart. It's not that he just wanted me to be miserable. He knew that I could do it. And yes, I could do it if I put my mind to it, but I would have been miserable doing it. And I did not want to be miserable. And so I had to be patient and stand my ground. I never had a fight with my dad over this. I never disrespected him over it. I had to hide a few things from him when I was in secondary school, for example. I think when I chose my schools and my course, I think I didn't tell him what I chose, but later on my mom told him. And then when we were in school and were allowed to change, we wrote an exam and were allowed to change or something like that. I told him just to make him happy that, okay, I had the opportunity to switch to science. And then he's like, okay, if you have the opportunity to switch to science, then switch to science. And I said, okay. But I did not, actually. I was looking for a way to actually escape anything science and anything math completely. That did not work 100%, but in the end, I still found myself where I wanted to be. So I think with parents, with mentors, with any kind of authority figure over you, it can be difficult kind of navigating this, what you want versus what I want. But the Holy Spirit will give you wisdom, and you yourself should also know what does God want from me? What is the will of God for me? I would have said, what do I want for myself? But more important is, what does God want from me? And stand your ground on that without necessarily being forceful or being disrespectful. Is there anything else that anyone would like to add on that? Oh, okay. AC, please, let's hear you.
Hi, Adra. Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, I've been here and it's been an enlightening. Hey, where's my English going? Anyway, so I just want to touch on a bit on authority with parents. Okay, I like the last thing you said very much. Okay, as we are young adults now, I mean, I don't know if we're not old adults. We are young adults because our parents are still older. But then at this point in time, if you are walking with God, I say if because if you are not, then probably you'll not understand what I'm saying. But if you are walking with God, then to some extent, you would know what the will of God for your life is. You will know the trajectory God is taking you on if you are walking with God. He will not show you the entire picture, but he will show you something to go with, something to go by. I just want to use the example of my marriage, okay? My mother was never, let me not say has, because right now she's like the biggest fan of my husband right now. But my mother, in the initial stages of my relationship with my husband now, said in her exact words, it's not the will of God for you. And I like the way he said, you don't need to fight, you don't need to be disrespectful, you don't need to be rude, but there is a way that you will stand your ground, and the authority, that's your parents in this question, would understand that you are not a child anymore. You actually know what you're talking about. There is a way that you make them understand that I know what I'm doing. I would love your support on it. Because my mom is a reverend minister, and that day she told me that she's not going to come for my wedding. She's going to go for a funeral. And we are planning a wedding, and my mom said she's going to go for a funeral to officiate the dead. And I'm like, wow, this woman, hey. All the while, my father was on board. My mom was adamantly not on board. My mom came on board 3 nights to my wedding. 3 nights. So I had my dad, I had my brothers, but she had managed to convince everybody who cared to listen that Nigerians are crooks. So all the people that she knew would see me and go like, hey, Mom, you're dreadful. Oh, okay, yeah, it's an international crowd. I was about to speak tree. This person you want to get married to, are you sure he's not going to go and kill you? Are you sure he's not going to go and kidnap you. I'm like, I'm marrying him. If you kidnap me, you go kidnap me. I mean, all sorts of things were going on. But then when you stand your ground, and you only stand your ground when you are walking with God, when you have a conviction. So it's not an easy thing when it comes to authority. When it comes to mentorship with a third party, because it's a mutual thing, you can be able to articulate yourself clearly. But when it comes to parents, some parents can be very adamant. They can be as adamant as the word go. But you have to make sure that you have heard what you have heard and you have heard from God. Then you can be strong in your conviction. In the long run, they would come along. They would come around. And that which God wants for you would be established. I believe that even as we grow, most of our decisions, our parents don't, if left to them alone, we will not do what we are doing. But I mean, my YouTube channel like this, when I started, my mother was like, I should stop because, hey, madam, what do you think about the YouTube channel? Everybody's hearing you. I'm like, hello, why? Don't do this. But then, if there is a way that you start something and then they see the vision and then they come on board. Our parents doesn't mean they know everything. They want the best for us doesn't mean they know what you want. So you have to be respectful. There's something my big brother says. There's a thin line between posture and pestering. It's an insider joke. But there's a thin line between respecting your parents and disrespecting them. You will think that you are standing your ground, but you'll be disrespecting them. So you have to stand your ground and be standing your ground in the Lord, making sure that you are still the child and they are the parent. And eventually, that which you want would come to pass for you. Thank you, Ajwa.
Amen. Thank you so much, AC. Sally.
Yeah, thank you, AC. Please share your YouTube handle so I check you out to queue. But I was going to ask, I don't know if it was a question or a suggestion, but I saw this video of somebody saying that she's married. And she was saying that when it comes to her marriage, anybody, she doesn't care if you're her parent or whatever, if you come between her marriage, she's going to cut you off. Like, she's not thinking twice. She's cutting you off. So the question I have is, like, I mean, I think Mami already, like, briefly spoke about it. But, like, in such an instant, do you think cutting off is the best thing to do whilst, like, you figure out what to do next and your parents also figure out what to do, or, like, whoever is in authority figures out what to do? Is it, like, a good thing to cut people off?
Aja, please, can I, before you come in?
Sure.
Sally, are you asking the question in context of marriage or in context of general livelihood?
General livelihood, but the video I saw was with respect to a married woman. So, like, I mean, it works in all those angles.
Okay. Aja, if I may.
Sure.
I really don't believe in cutting people off. I believe in distancing yourself, but I don't believe in cutting people off. Not necessarily cutting people off in the sense that you've literally like blocked them, thrown them away into the bush. You don't hear from them, they don't hear from you. Like, well, I personally don't believe in cutting people off because you don't know where your next blessing is going to come from. But distancing yourself, why not? To save your mental peace and your peace of mind. Yes. Now let me bring it into the marriage context. In the marriage context, before you get married, you need a whole village to keep you and your spouse to be in check, in good condition, ready for marriage. When you marry, it's a triangle. You, your spouse, and God. Everybody's a third party. And in marriage, third parties are not allowed. So it's not necessarily cutting off. It's just not entertaining third parties. Full stop. Everybody is a third party. Your parents, his parents, your siblings, his siblings, your friends, his friends, everybody else for third party. You, a husband, and God. Unless it's beyond you, your husband, and God. And what is beyond God anyway? So, boils down to you, your husband, and God. So, yeah, that's my submission on that.
Thank you, AC. Yeah, I would say that try to avoid cutting your parents off, even in the context of marriage. What's difficult is creating boundaries. It's a difficult topic, creating boundaries, but I believe that, like AC was talking about, distancing yourself, that's creating a kind of boundary and making it clear what you will entertain and what you will not entertain. But I think that as much as possible, you should avoid having to cut your family off, because as much as it's you, God, and your husband, you also, especially in our African context where the extended family is so active in our lives. When I even look at my sisters, for example, I always tell them that they need to be paying my mother royalties, because they've turned my mom into, and they've turned my parents' home. They've turned my parents' home into a daycare, and they've turned my mom into a nanny, right? And as much as some family members can be very troublesome, and we pray that none of us would have to experience that we will all have wonderful families and wonderful in-laws, but some family members can be troublesome. And I think there you overcome evil with love, but you have to build boundaries through the wisdom of God. But I would still say that as much as possible, try to avoid cutting people completely off. You are not under any obligation to accept what your parents say about your marriage or accept what your husband's parents say about your marriage. When it comes to you and your family unit, yes, it's between you, your husband, and God, or it's between you, your spouse, and God. But no matter what, at some point in time, you will need your extra family, because you and your husband are one. And with God, the three of you, that's a threefold cord. It's one. So no single one person is expected to live alone. God did not create us to be islands. He created us to be relational beings. So you will need other people to be around you. So as much as possible, in the context of marriage, in the context outside of marriage, I would also say that try to avoid cutting people off, but be clear on your boundaries. It's really difficult creating boundaries and establishing boundaries, but be clear on your boundaries. Yeah.